As the dawn broke in Maysalun, Syria on the 24th of July 1920, Yusuf Al-Azma would have been fully aware of how desperate his situation was. From his vantage point up in the mountains, he would have been able to see the French troops massed in the valley below, around 12,000 of them, professional soldiers largely made up of colonial battalions from places like Senegal and Algeria, all backed up by tanks, cavalry and top-of-the-range artillery. Al-Azma, on the other hand, was surrounded by irregulars from the recently disbanded Arab army, padded out with Damascus and Bedouin camel cavalry, and a smattering of civilians loyal to the cause. They may have numbered 4,000 at most, and what they lacked in numbers was only made worse by their provisions. The rifles were mostly discarded Ottoman arms, and some of the men wielded swords and even sticks. But they did have a few artillery pieces and machine guns, though not nearly enough shells and ammunition to put up a good fight. But despite the insurmountable odds, Al-Azma and his men stared the opposing French down and prepared for battle. Let's pause there and examine how Yusuf Al-Azma found himself in this desperate position. Born into a wealthy Damascus family of Turkmen descent in 1883, Al-Azma graduated from the Ottoman Military Academy. Syria at the time was under Ottoman Turkish rule, and he served in the Ottoman Army's 25th Infantry Division during World War I. Whilst he was serving in World War I, the Ottoman Empire was shook by the Arab Revolt. In 1916, Sharif Hussein of Mecca rose up against Ottoman rule, and with British help was able to see some quick successes. By the end of the First World War in October 1918, Al-Azma's hometown of Damascus was conquered by troops led by Hussein's son Emir Faisal. The ethnically Arab Al-Azma returned home and joined Al-Fatah, an Arab nationalist secret society, and became close with Emir Faisal. By January 1920, Al-Azma was appointed the Minister of War for the newly created Syrian Arabic Kingdom. Things were brewing in the background though. Despite the British promising the Arabs their own kingdom in return for rising up against the Ottoman Empire in World War I, in secret the British had signed the Sykes-Picot Agreement with the French, which negotiated the division of the Ottomans' Arab territories between the two European powers. This was backed by the League of Nations, and what is today Syria and Lebanon fell under the French mandate. This was devastating news for the Arabs, who will have felt betrayed by the French and especially the British, who promised the Arabs their own nation if they rose up against the Ottomans. Despite the injustice, the Syrian government was undecided on how to react. The minority faction, fearful of French military power, favoured compromise, and the majority, led by Al-Azma, rejected French rule by any means. Meanwhile, French forces commanded by General Henri Giraud deployed to the town of Baalbek, eager to hunt down any Arab insurgents. There were revolts in northern Syria and Aleppo at the time, and the whole region seemed to be on a knife's edge. The revolts were inspired by Mustafa Kemal's successes against the French in Turkey, and Yusuf Al-Azma looked to capitalise on this by recruiting as many soldiers as he could into the nascent Arab army of Syria. Yassin al-Hashimi, an Arab military officer who had served in the Ottoman army, was tasked with inspecting Al-Azma's forces ahead of any engagement with the French. Al-Hashimi found the Arab army woefully unprepared and under-equipped for a serious confrontation with the French army. Things were made more difficult by King Faisal's unwillingness to fully back the Arab resistance. Faisal was fearful of French reprisal, and hoped that his relationship with the British would encourage the French to back off. But Faisal was unaware that both colonial powers had been secretly plotting to carve up his new kingdom's territory behind his back. On the 14th of July, the French issued an ultimatum to the Syrians to disband their army and submit to French rule. A few days later, Faisal and his cabinet met, and all but Al-Azma decided to give in to French demands. Al-Azma, disgusted at his compatriots' cowardice, immediately withdrew his troops into the mountains. This was in direct defiance of Faisal, who had ordered the disbandment of the Syrian army. Meanwhile, Henry Giraud and his troops moved on Maysalun, which takes us back to the morning of the 24th of July, with the Arabian irregulars facing the numerically superior, more experienced and more technologically advanced French army in the valley below. Yusuf Al-Azma will have known the odds were stacked against him and his men, but still refused to compromise on his morals, and was willing to fight till the bitter end. The first clashes took place at 6:30 a.m, when French tanks stormed the centre of the Syrian defensive line, followed by cavalry support on the flanks. The Syrians countered with camel cavalry and artillery fire, and put up stiff resistance, but lacked coordination between their different units, so by 8:30 a.m. the French had broken through the Syrian central trench. By 10:30 they had reached Al-Azma's headquarters. With the French 100 metres away from him and bullets and shells hurtling by, Al-Azma fearlessly rushed to an artilleryman and commanded him to fire at the French tanks that were approaching. Before any shell was fired, Al-Azma was fatally shot in the head and chest by machine gun fire from a French tank crew. Shortly after, what was left of the Arab forces had retreated in disarray towards Damascus. In his memoirs, General Giraud wrote that the Syrian troops left behind 15 cannons, 40 rifles, and a general named Yusuf Al-Azma. He died a courageous soldier's death in battle. Al-Azma's refusal to surrender to the French when all his peers in government had, and his commitment to engaging the enemy with hugely inferior forces, made him a national hero in Syria and the Arab world. Fares el-Khoury, the future Prime Minister of Syria, said Al-Azma was henceforth immortalised by Syrians as the supreme national martyr. His statue stands in a major square named after him in central Damascus, and many streets and schools in the country still bear his name. In the 1930s, a tomb for Al-Azma was built inside a shaded grove at Maysalun, and to this day the Syrian military honours Al-Azma at his tomb on Maysalun Day every year.